Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're kicking off our season covering the invasion with a show that barely mentions WCW at all. It's Backlash 2001. Cush, are you nervous to jump into what might be our most ambitious season to date?
Golly. In terms of ambition, I really am. I'm not nervous. I'm excited, but I mentally put myself back into the place where I was when I was watching this live, and it was the most electric television week to week I could possibly imagine, as things were exploding out of nowhere left and right, like things that I had never heard of, people that I had never seen, but like excitement. And I wonder now, going back and looking at it again, I don't think it's going to be the same, is it?
No, I think you're going to experience it more the way I did. Which, to be fair, as we go along, I really was into the invasion at first, and then it just became clear, there were no reinforcements coming, and then it got lame.
I do think it's going to be an interesting through line as we go to compare where each one of us was, in terms of where our fandom at that point. Because again, I've just come back as a fan. I don't know anything about any WCW wrestlers. So when Lance Storm comes in, I'm like, whoa, that guy must be a huge star.
Oh, is that guy the WCW champion?
Literally, what the fuck do I know? DDP, wow, I guess he's some kind of weird rapist.
Yeah, must be some kind of pervert, I guess. Okay, interesting. Didn't know they had those over in WCW.
That's a weird gimmick, but all right, we'll figure it out.
We'll talk about Backlash 2001 in a little bit. But first, we've got some current wrestling stories, starting with one that actually was announced at WrestleMania, but we didn't get to it last week. So let's talk about WWE buying AAA and whether New Japan is next. So, in a move I did not see coming, WWE has bought AAA and is apparently going to continue to independently operate it, possibly as NXT Mexico.
So, this is a culmination of a lot of things, right? Triple H has always wanted to branch out and create. You remember that big board he had at that one presentation that he did, was NXT in every country.
NXT Europe, NXT Japan, NXT Mexico, and now maybe we're going to do it.
Much like the WWE Network was Vince's grand vision, Triple H's grand vision is put WWE on every kind of wrestling that there is everywhere, which you could either interpret as being so they can help maintain it and keep it alive and keep the wrestling business flowing, or so you can conquer everything and no one can ever challenge you again, which, depending on how cynical you feel at the moment.
Yeah. So, I don't know, can they pull this off? Apparently they're gonna, keep the current management team in place, and they're gonna be, I don't know how hands-on an owner, but they're going to let Conan keep booking. We think that's going to work.
So first of all, there's probably not that many people who heard this story who actually know much about the inner workings of AAA.
Definitely not me.
Yeah. Lucha Libre is not really that popular in America, at least in terms of the companies themselves. But an important thing to understand in terms of how this affects other companies is that a big part of this is because Conan is a petty asshole, and he hates Tony Khan so much that I think he did this at least 50% out of spite.
Yeah. Also, their top star is Alberto Del Rio. We think that's going to continue?
That is interesting, isn't it? Because I guess Paige isn't in their company. I certainly wouldn't put it past them.
Yes, might be again soon.
It would really surprise me if they did anything other than have Alberto Del Rio show up on their TV to actually be hey, we're doing business with AAA because you guys know who this is.
Yeah. No, they could. You could portray him as the kayfabe owner of AAA. Close enough.
But the funny thing about this too is that this is sort of a sample of what I think we always suspected, which is that AAA will not be partners with WWE. That is not the plan. They will be partners with NXT In much the same way that, like, they tried with All Japan and Noah to make them direct partners with NXT, because Triple H doesn't have a vision of sharing WWE with the world.
No,
He has a vision of making both
on
developmental territory.
These other companies aren't on WWE's level. They would not compete with them. Yes, they announced a Worlds Collide show. That's going to be AAA versus NXT. I don't remember when that is.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, this does so CMLL versus AAA has been kind of like a cold war for the last 20 years. They're like not really at war. They just kind of coexist, even though like they don't let wrestlers like work for both of them at the same time. Like it's contentious, but it's not. Yeah. This is going to set off the beginnings of an actual Mexican war, because AEW is partnered with CMLL and literally running shows there right now.
Yeah, they're about to run a huge show in Arena, Mexico that's sold out.
And to be clear, I've seen people online be like, CMLL sells out every week. This isn't special. No, they don't. This show is a special sellout, and it's selling out because of its AEW involvement. So after decades of Mexican fans being like, please bring wrestling here, suddenly their territory is being fought over by American wrestling companies.
So 2 interesting things I learned about AAA after this. One, almost none of their wrestlers are on long-term contracts, which I have to assume will change now. 2, they make a significant portion of their revenue from renting their wrestlers out to, Mexican independent promotions.
Yep.
I wonder if that practice will continue.
Hey, do you remember Lucha Underground, where all of these wrestlers got trapped into impossible contracts?
Oh, you mean the coolest thing ever that we have to bring back?
Yes, but do you remember how it was for the wrestlers, where they were all trapped into impossible contracts and they didn't even know who they actually worked for in the end? That's how AAA does business.
That wasn't great.
Yeah.
I think Dario Cueto is still in MLW.
He is, actually, yeah.
I just saw him tweet burying Eric Bischoff, which is very funny and topical at the moment.
Didn't he say something like, if he had pitched this while he was with this company, we would shat on him?
Okay, and I guess the other side of this, what's next? Could it be New Japan, All Japan, Noah? All those companies feel like they can be had for the price.
Yeah, here's the thing. Like, Triple H has flirted with both All Japan and Noah, much more extensively with Noah. But the prize is New Japan. Because what he's after is companies that can run themselves. Yeah. And then he can, like, send guys there, like, do whatever. But, like, having to, like, oversee all of the shit would be, like, way too much work for one person. He's not planning on running all of these companies himself. He wants companies that are capable of existing and just feed him talent forever. New Japan is in a really weird place, Steve.
Yeah, New Japan is getting eaten in this wrestling war. They cannot keep up with WWE and AEW. Just facts are facts. They're a much smaller company, and I don't know how the yen is doing against the dollar these days. I know the dollar's down a bit, but okay. Go. Who'd they just lose?
Yeah, they just lost Naito. And we already knew that Naito was on his way out because literally his eye has had like a million surgeries on it and his knees are completely shot. Like, he was toast and done. But the way that he just left, completely abruptly out of the blue, like 1 month's notice, and he's gone. And he's not openly retired, he's freelance now, which means that he didn't so much want to stop wrestling as leave the company, is a worrying sign, because there's never been anybody in the history of Japanese wrestling that hated American wrestling involvement more than him.
Yeah.
And, like, they're not making money, but at the same time, all of this began because the yen was so down that they could no longer, like, actually compete for contracts. And we've learned recently that, like, a lot of their wrestlers are under, like, more paid per appearance contracts than the guaranteed ones have passed. And basically everybody who was under a guaranteed contract, Jeff Cobb is a recent example, is leaving as soon as those contracts come up, I assume because they can't afford to pay him. So this all paints a very worrying picture.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, New Japan is a much smaller company than WWE and AEW. They absolutely can't, anybody that either of those companies wants from them, they will get. So, Look, New Japan needs money, and I can see WWE seems to want to expand into Japan, so I can see a deal there. Here's the one to hit you with, though. What if Tony Khan bought New Japan?
You're saying words out loud that turn my stomach to such an extent that I'm having trouble forming responses to them. It would be better, but what you're essentially saying, and this is what mostly is being said in the press about the AAA purchase, is that there's no way for an American wrestling company to buy New Japan or buy AAA without literally, like, making a dent culturally in that country we're talking about. Like, wrestling in Japan can't survive WWE buying its it's basically its only prosperous wrestling company and, like, just taking that tradition out from under it. And the same goes for Mexico, where there are basically two functional companies, and if they buy one and put the other out of business, they just own Lucha Libre. Like, this is not a good thing.
That's good. Not arguing any of these things would be positive, but this is the real world. I guess the other thing to consider, and I have no idea whether the Japanese government would allow an American company to buy New Japan, I have no idea. Like, what kind of legal barriers there might be in place to prevent that.
I mean, it wouldn't represent, like, a monopoly of any sort. So, like, I don't know that there would be anything.
No, but there could still be protectionism against for a foreign company acquiring, a company in Japan.
It would be possible. It's just the way that Japanese wrestling is at the moment. If they did buy New Japan, I don't think there's any functional way that the other promotions could put up a fight at that point. And at least CMLL is in good enough shape that I don't think WWE will just own the entire concept of Lucha Libre right off the bat.
I agree.
Japanese wrestling is not in that same place. It would be a pretty gross betrayal of Japanese wrestling as a whole to sell, but it's a fucking business.
Yeah,
man.
Does Bushiroad really care about that?
The only thing that makes it better is that, like, we're not talking about, like, shareholders here. If New Japan was, like, a publicly traded company, they would have no choice but to sell.
Yeah, subject to a hostile takeover.
So here we are. This is maybe the most depressing fucking conversation we've ever had.
This is the world we live in. WWE's getting bigger and bigger, and Triple H has dreamed of this global territory system for so long, and I think we said this, like, last year when there was talk about, like, starting NXT Japan. I think we were both just like, why not just buy one of the Japanese companies instead of trying to start your own?
Yeah, and here we are.
Makes a lot more sense.
But here's the other thing. As we approach the end of this bubble, the end of perhaps the rights bubble that they've been milking hundreds of millions of dollars off of, and the end of this big boom period that they're in, if they buy the whole rest of the wrestling industry and then go down in flames, what does that mean? What does that mean for all of it?
WWE at this point is never going to go out of business.
I don't think they're going to die.
These acquisitions we're talking about are tiny. I mean, in the grand scheme of things. Like, it's $1 billion company. I don't know, what's New Japan worth? Maybe $150 million US?
Well, let's say this. Let's say they buy New Japan, and then they have, like, a really lean year, and they need to, like, cut out, like, some of their other things. So then they cut New Japan loose.
Yeah, that would be first. The international stuff would always be first on the chopping block.
Yeah, so that's my concern. It's like, what does all of this look like 5 years from now? And, like, maybe I'm being pessimistic, but, man, I don't know.
Story number 2, the Owen Hart Cup Finals are set. On the men's side, Hangman beat Fletcher in a badass match to advance to the finals against Will Ospreay. This men's tournament has been pretty much perfect from start to finish.
I swear to God, the level of talent they got here, of just dudes just going for it.
5-star matches on TV every week. It's ridiculous. We've never seen anything like it before.
When guys like Kevin Knight and Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita are not the guys that you're pushing because there are better guys ahead of them, what an insane wealth of riches.
So, who wins that final? My suspicion is it's Hangman versus Moxley at All In, but I could see them wanting Ospreay to win the title at All In and carry it to Forbidden Door into London as champion.
Like, the Hangman Page superfan that is within me wants him to win. But I think this is the foretold Ospreay title shot that we've all been waiting for. Because I think he's still by a pretty huge margin the biggest babyface in this company. And Hangman, while that would be a great feud and a great match, I don't know exactly what that character, where it's going in terms of Moxley in the title at this point. He's still very much a conflicted character.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I do see that issue, that I'm not sure he's truly made his babyface turn yet. So maybe you have Moxley beat Hangman at All In, and then Ospreay can beat Moxley at Forbidden Door in London.
Steve, you've opened the door to my pervert thoughts. Here we go. Moxley beats Ospreay at All In.
And then what?
I've always believed from the beginning that if they're doing this Darkest Night, somebody has to save AEW thing, it should be Hangman. Yeah. That's the whole purpose of AEW. Like, he's the protagonist. That's what it's supposed to be. He finally puts all this shit to the side, comes riding in on his horse, probably literally, and saves the company.
Literally. Yeah. But it's going to take him a little bit longer to realize he's the hero of our story.
But also, I don't think that can happen. Forbidden Door is a weird place for that to happen. So I don't know where the right spot that is.
He's not winning it in London. That would make no sense.
Yeah. So maybe you do Moxley and it's a fuck finish it All In, and then you do a rematch at Forbidden Door. Yeah. I don't know.
We'll see. On the women's side, we have Mercedes against Jamie Hayter. Can't imagine any outcome here other than Mercedes winning.
This has also been a fucking badass tournament full of bangers. I appreciate them finally resurrecting Jamie Hayter from the grave, from the dark matches where they've been having her for no fucking reason.
I haven't heard from her in a while.
I was so excited to have her back, and then she's just been, like, not there for so long. But I don't think that this is in any way in doubt. We are moving towards a Mercedes Moné versus Toni Storm super match. I assume at All In, or wherever the fuck we're going to do it.
And then story number 3. Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan's new venture, Real American Freestyle.
When you saw for the first time the video of them doing the NWO thing, and it's just old-ass Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan being like, ooh, oh, you know who we are, but you don't know why we're here.
Why so serious, brother?
And just, like, giggling to themselves. Did you see the cut that somebody posted on Twitter where they removed the music, and it's just these two...
That sounds horrifying.
It's grim.
The two lamest dads in the neighborhood trying to be cool.
And they, like, do all this hinting about, like, a third man, so of course the internet lights up, like, they're gonna work with Vince and start a new promotion. Actually, what they're doing is this is an amateur wrestling promotion. Is that right?
Yes. The third man is wrestling coach Izzy Martinez, and their venture is called Real American Freestyle, which is a professional freestyle wrestling league. Ostensibly, this will be shoot wrestling in the style of the freestyle wrestling you would see in the Olympics. I will note that this has been tried before. There was a thing I remember watching when I was, I think it was in the early 2000s. It was called Real Pro Wrestling, and it was this exact thing. It was an attempt to, like, have amateur wrestling with professionals, and it lasted one season before it was canceled.
I just don't think there's really a demand for this. I could be totally mistaken. I know that amateur wrestling is always
college wrestling feels like it's going through a little bit. It's going through an expansion just in the sense that you can see it now. If you, like, subscribe to the Big Ten Plus service, you can watch, like, the Iowa and Penn State and other Big Ten schools who are so good have their meets, but I wouldn't call it popular in any real sense.
It just seems like a really bizarre idea. And we were, like, laughing before
these guys, of all people, to be involved in it.
Yeah, what if you got Kurt and Brock? Well, not Brock. What if you got Kurt and somebody who wasn't disgraced to do this?
Kurt is who I think of as, like, okay, I mean, I understand Hogan is a big enough name. Hogan can get booked in a lot of places, but I feel like Kurt Angle can get booked on some things too, and he's a much better spokesman for this.
Yes, the greatest American amateur wrestler of all time. Yeah, I would want to get him involved. Meanwhile, having Bischoff and Hogan involved, if I were a fan of amateur wrestling, I'd be like, oh great, the XFL of amateur wrestling.
Just
fantastic.
Disgraceful, the two biggest carnies out there.
Because if you think about it, what do amateur wrestling fans hate more than professional wrestling? I can't think of anything.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know, I thought there was an answer. There was like, I don't know, racism? That doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Well, especially not since it's mostly happening in Iowa and shit like that, but that's neither here nor there. No, I just mean that, like, think about, like, how if you're an amateur wrestling fan, you've had to spend your entire life being like, it's not pro wrestling.
Not that fake, phony bullshit. And here you got, like, again, Hulk Hogan, the biggest showman, fake-ass carny wrestler in history.
It's just such a bizarre thing. Like, Steve literally asked me if I wanted to go to this, and I'm like, no!
First taping's going to be August 30th in Cleveland. We could go.
Of course we could, but, like, look, how long into a 3-hour show could we, like, continue enjoying it just for the memeability?
I mean, we sat through that fucking awful CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre match at SummerSlam last year.
You are not wrong about that. I don't think anyone in the world hates that match as much as we do.
All right, let's turn the clock back to April 2001. Obviously, the big story coming out of WrestleMania was Steve Austin's heel turn and his alliance with Vince McMahon. Were you excited? But one, did you watch WrestleMania 17 live?
I did, yes.
I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I didn't because it was spring break and I was traveling with my family. So I think I found out Austin had turned like when I got on the internet the morning after to see the results.
This was my first WrestleMania back because I literally started watching again at Fully Loaded 2000. So like I was all in for this. And also, and I have to say this, and I'm sorry to everybody out there, I did not like Steve Austin because I only knew him as A, serial killer Steve Austin from before I had started watching, or B, this like weird asshole who showed back up after like the car accident thing and was doing the who ran over Stone Cold angle. It's not, like, without the nostalgia for Austin from the period in between, I didn't like this guy.
I will say you were very much in the minority of that opinion.
Oh, yeah.
I was very intrigued by it. You know, I don't know if I was just like, I was kind of ready for something different, I have to admit, because it did feel like they were running out of stuff for Austin to do, right?
Yeah, and I do think, look, I'm not somebody who's against the idea of Austin turning heel. I've said throughout this whole thing that, like, either I think it would have been smart to do it later in the year, or, as we're about to get to, if he had had a super strong babyface to oppose him, I think it would have worked. I don't think turning him at WrestleMania was the right choice because I don't think there was any way they were going to boo him. But, like, I do think that it's fine and interesting.
Raw the night after WrestleMania was April 2nd in Fort Worth, Texas. They did a huge rating for this between the intrigue of the results of WrestleMania and the fact that Nitro was canceled, so they were unopposed, and I assume a lot of WCW fans. Man, imagine being a WCW dead-ender who was still only watching Nitro at the end there. What fascinating people those would be to meet.
What if you watched Nitro every week, but you didn't watch Raw, and then you missed 1 week, and then you're like, hey, what happened to Nitro?
There had to be some people, I'm sure, I don't think it was a huge chunk of their audience, but there had to be some people who were strictly WCW fans and probably never made the transition. Because as we see, like Raw's ratings pretty quickly go back to exactly where they were before Nitro was canceled, which makes me feel like they didn't really pick up any new fans here.
No, this is Black Sunday too, man. If you did like WCW, then apparently you would not have wanted to follow it. Listen, I don't think that the fall off from people not wanting to watch heel Austin is something that happens right away. I think that's something that we portray it as kind of when we talk about this time, but I don't think that's the actual reality. I think people did give it a second and were kind of interested. If you wanted me to actually pinpoint the problem, I do think it's the two-man power trip that ruins it.
They hold their ratings for these next few weeks. It's May and then especially after Judgment Day that they start to sink.
And really, like, once Triple H goes out, and once it's clear that there's no direction for Austin, and that the invasion's kind of a dud, I think that's when people are like, you know what, fuck this.
This is it. Yeah, we're done. McMahon introduced Austin to do a promo. Austin teased he was going to beat McMahon up, and then he said he didn't know the fans an explanation for why he joined up with Vince. That's a cliche, but it's a reliable heat getter. There's a reason bookers always go back to that.
Yeah. And I mean, it's something that people understand. Like, I wish that he had just out and out, like, come out and been like, I don't know that I could have done this without Vince, but goddamn it, I'm back on top of the mountain and I don't give a fuck what I had to do. He doesn't quite go there. And he starts leaning into this, like, weird, paranoid, crazy part of his personality really heavy.
The main event that night was Austin versus Rock in a cage. That ended in a no contest when Vince interfered. Triple H came out, and when I say the fans exploded, I can't do it justice how big this pop was.
This pop was so... Okay. So what's going to happen is Triple H is going to betray The Rock and help Austin. They're going to form the two-man power trip, okay? If I heard a pop this big for Triple H and I'm Vince in the ring, I would have audibled on the moment. I don't give a fuck what plans we had. Like, these fans want babyface Triple H versus heel Stone Cold so fucking bad that it literally would have it would have fixed the whole thing just to give it to them.
But instead, Triple H joins with Austin and beats up Rock. What I've always heard is they wanted Triple H to go babyface, and he just didn't want to do it. He didn't think he was a good babyface, wanted to stay heel. And historically, Triple H is not a good babyface, but I think this is the time he could have pulled it off.
Also, like, so here's the plans that were originally set out in terms of what we know, okay? They wanted to do heel Stone Cold versus babyface Triple H here. It probably runs until, like, SummerSlam, right?
Yeah, they could have gotten a few matches out of that.
Then you start rolling with the invasion, and that culminates at WrestleMania. And by then, what happens in the fall? We start to get, like, the flares. We start to get we get the NWO. Stuff starts to happen that would have made the invasion work.
That's the big thing with the invasion. The longer you can delay it, the more people become available. Because once they get off those insane WCW contracts, you can get them in for pennies on the dollar because they have nowhere else to work and make any money.
Yeah. If you launch the invasion with Flair, Bischoff, and the NWO, how different is that, really?
SmackDown that week was in Oklahoma City, which of course meant Jim Ross was going to die because that's the way WWE did things when they went through Oklahoma in that era.
I read Jim Ross's autobiography that he just released pretty recently, and in it, there's like a whole chapter about how, every time he went to Oklahoma City, I had to get my fucking ass kicked.
Austin beats him up here, potatoed the hell out of him, and cut him with a scalpel. He went New Jack on him.
That was pretty brutal. Again,
so much blood. This was ugly.
I don't know what kind of character he's really trying to turn this into, but I feel like it would have been so much more effective if he had been like, Jim, I heard your commentary. Like, are you not my friend anymore? It's like, just because I've done this, like, just because you don't understand that I needed this, like, it doesn't come from a personal place. He's just like, I'm a heel now. Jim Ross has to die.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're trying to get him heat, and this is... Beating the hell out of when we talk about reliable heat getters, beating up JR was also about as good as you could get in this era.
And it does work a little bit, but I just think that, like, again, we're not trying to tell a story here. We're just playing the heel hits, you know?
Yeah. Would it have been more heelish if he just had Vince fire JR?
That would have been way more heelish. If at the end of that promo, he like hugs...
Fuck you, fat boy. Get out of here.
Yeah, he just hugs JR and he's just like, you were my friend for a number of years, but now you're just in the way. You're fucking fired. And then call out Michael Cole to the biggest heat of all time.
In the main event that night, Triple H beat Jericho to win the Intercontinental title. Sorry, Jericho. Triple H got a pose.
Yep. You know what I'm just realizing? And this is so disgusting that I'm not even sure I want to say it, but like, they should have just done the Authority, right? Like, wouldn't that be so much more disgusting for Stone Cold Steve Austin to like start wearing a suit?
Stooges. I mean, that's the barrier they wouldn't break. Is he still dressed like Stone Cold? They wouldn't have him put the suit on. Putting on the suit. What if he went back to the suit and like the stunning Steve Austin robes and all that?
God, I think that would have been heat. Like people get him some fucking hair plugs.
On SmackDown the next week, Jeff Hardy upset Triple H to win the Intercontinental title. That was one of the biggest shockers in history. And then he lost it right back to Triple H on the next Raw. Still, big moment for Jeff.
That was an incredible moment. They really level up the Hardy Boys because suddenly you've created a tag team that is so unassailable. This is like the Shield problem, right? Yeah. Who the fuck could possibly compete with these two guys?
Do you think they were actually thinking of doing the Hardys against Austin and Triple H at Backlash?
Weirdly, I don't think that they were seriously considering it, but weirdly, I think it would have drawn better than this did. Because I just feel like...
The one that makes more sense to me, what about the Dudleys?
The Dudleys, I honestly think, would have come off like more of a threat.
Actually take them seriously, like physically. They're big enough. They aren't as sympathetic, although that's what Spike is there for.
Yeah. Like, that is interesting. To see them have to run through, like, all these great tag teams would have actually been really interesting.
On Raw a week later, Triple H and Austin beat the hell out of Matt, Jeff, and yes, Lita with chair shots. Austin laid these in on her. This was intense.
I think, like, we got, like, a question about this, like, from one of our people. Like, I don't want to jump to that too soon, but, like, I genuinely do think that this was the most effective heel shit that they did the entire time with Austin. Because, like, nobody was more over than the Hardy Boys at this point.
Yeah. This did get them some heat. This nearly got them kicked off the air in Canada.
That is the thing, too, because, like... And I don't actually have a problem with, like, using Lita in this way, because I don't think it's as, like...
I don't either, actually.
She's an athlete. She's, like, one of the workers. She's just in that TLC
like, here's my ethics of, like, man-on-women violence. Like, I don't like it when baby faces beat up women. Like, I hate, like, when they had rock bottom Stephanie. I don't like that.
I don't like the LOL they had it coming kind of shit.
Yeah. And I don't like domestic violence. Like, I'm not into, like, domestic violence angles. It makes my stomach turn.
But in this case, Lita's part of the act. She's a wrestler. She's a fighter. It's
portrayed as a horrifying, heinous act by a heel that he's beating this woman up.
Yeah. But also, like, Jeff and Matt are getting their asses whooped just as bad.
From that perspective, fair game. Lita's been mixing it up with the guys. I think it was a 6-person match or was it a 3-on-2? I'm trying to remember. It was a match, I think. Maybe it was a 3-on-2 match.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was. Maybe it was that.
Don't judge this the same as other stuff like this.
Yeah. Our main event tonight, Austin and Triple H will team up against The Undertaker and Kane with the WWF title, the Intercontinental title, and the tag titles on the line. Winner takes all. I figured out why, because in storyline, I remember when we covered the show the first time, I was like, how the hell in storyline do they have to do this when Vince is the boss? I had forgotten, because Vince and Linda are getting divorced, Linda has a veto on Vince's decisions. So Linda vetoed it just being a tag title match and insisted that the IC title and the world title had to be on the line in the match too. And that's how we got here.
Two things about this. One, this actually kind of levels up the tag team titles in a way that they got a little stale in the post kind of TLC era. Like Austin and Triple H won.
The TLC match was 3 weeks ago.
No, I know that, but I just mean like those guys and those acts had gotten kind of stale. Like
They were facing like where we go. They couldn't go any bigger than they had. So I think there was a question of where they were going, and they were clearly looking to split up Edge and Christian and Matt and Jeff.
right. So like I feel like this levels up that like Austin and Triple H want those belts this bad.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. And two, boy, this must have looked so good on paper. Like, oh, Kane and The Undertaker, those guys are a match for Austin and Triple H. I don't know if they had realized how much people did not give a fuck about Kane and The Undertaker at this specific time in history.
Here's the thing. I think The Undertaker was very over on his own here, but something about putting him with Kane makes him come off really lame.
And all four of these guys involved together feel so retread, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Like,
it's very 1999, yeah.
Austin and The Undertaker should not have, like, even looked at each other for another 5 years.
Yeah, that combination for me was repulsive. Like, I never wanted to see those guys. After that match had been running, think about how many matches those guys had against each other. They wrestled in 97 at the Cold Day in Hell, 98 at SummerSlam, the Triple Threat at Breakdown, the Buried Alive match, Over the Edge. Austin won the title back from Undertaker on Raw in 99 and Fully Loaded. That's 8 pay-per-view matches, plus God knows how many TV matches they had been on opposite sides of.
Yeah. And, like, the funny thing is that, like, the answer to this winds up being this match is going to be completely dead on arrival. Like, we'll get to that when we get to it, but, like, this match is not over at all. But, like, a couple weeks from now, Benoit and Jericho are going to come along, and we're going to get some of the most white-hot shit in the history of tag team wrestling.
Great matches that people did not watch.
Yep, unfortunately.
The world is unfair. Like, Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho were not draws at this point.
Yeah. That's the problem, is that they have a lot of guys for Austin and Triple H to fight, but it's not the right guys. And, like, there's nobody right below. Like, where are they going to go after? If Triple H doesn't tear his quad, what the fuck is the plan?
Yeah, were they all? I mean, I think maybe I think they were accelerating the Austin Triple H split, and they were going to split up sooner because we'll just talk about it next week. What happens there? But like, Austin accidentally cost Triple H the Intercontinental title next month, so I think they were probably going to accelerate the split. I'm trying to think. What would have been the better main event here? Would you have just done Austin versus Undertaker heads up instead?
No, honestly, I probably would have done the Hardys versus the Power Trip. I don't hate that idea at all. I'm not sure this show has a main event. Like, and the idea that you were going to turn like break up Triple H and Austin later when Triple H wasn't about to become a gigantic babyface, it's just such a stupid ass missed opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah. The April 23rd Observer had a story on the upcoming relaunch of WCW. The best time slot they could get was 11 p.m. on TNN on Saturday nights. What kind of sick freaks would have watched that?
Here's the other thing, though. They couldn't get... this is what I've always wondered. They always push wrestling into, like, the graveyard shift at the end of the night. What about, like, 6 in the afternoon? Could they have gotten back to where it's supposed to be?
Now we're talking 6:05 Eastern.
Because I don't think there's a lot of competition for that time slot.
No, yeah, we talk about like that's the best. Like, what was TNN showing? Were they just like showing reruns of Star Trek in the afternoon?
Yeah, just like fucking Walker, Texas Ranger and shit.
I mean, I guess the thing to put in context, WCW was doing like 2 million viewers a week, and while that's on par with like what SmackDown does on USA Today, that was not a good rating for primetime cable, like in the year 2001. Like, that was actually very bad for the time. So like, this was not something that was drawing like good viewership is the problem. But yeah, afternoon might have been the way to go instead.
This is maybe a question that we need to grapple with here that we've never really fully done. And that's that should they have bothered to do the invasion at all? Was there, no matter who it was going to be, was there actual worth in trying to relaunch WCW?
I understand the idea, and I think WCW, they had driven off their fan base. I'm not sure it was impossible to get it back, but as they realize, it's not worth it if your time slot is 11 p.m. on Saturday night.
Right.
Like, not enough people are going to watch that. You're not going to sell any pay-per-views. I think selling tickets for your shows is going to be really tough. So they were right to not try to relaunch this. I think the best idea I've ever seen for the invasion was that you just bring a bunch of the WCW guys onto the WWF roster, and then some period down the line, they band together as a stable and shit gets real. Like,
so you mean like the exact way that ECW turns on WWE later on?
Yes.
Where just like they're all in the ring and you don't really think about it, and suddenly
it's like the Royal Rumble, and like, you know, suddenly you realize, hey, that's a lot of WCW guys in there, and then they just start beating down all the WWF guys and like tearing the announce tables apart and all that stuff, that kind of thing. Probably is the best way to go, because like then you've introduced all these characters and your audience knows who they are.
I think that's probably the right way to do it. And then you can introduce a bunch of people after that. But somebody has to be over and known by your audience to start.
Yeah, you've brought in Booker T and DDP and, you know, whichever other guys you feel confident in can actually get over on your show.
And this is why I think, like, if you had like if you don't start the invasion until the Royal Rumble, and you can just portray Booker T and DDP and all these guys as like just new stars, not like WCW's invading, how much more effective is that? That like they're not saddled with WCW necessarily when they come in.
So they didn't have much under contract. I don't even think they had Booker T and DDP yet. I think they got those guys later. So we're looking at a roster of Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, Hugh Morris, the Natural Born Thrillers, the Cruiserweights, and a few other guys. It is not a show it's not a roster you can build a show around. I think you're gonna have to send some guys from the WWF roster over, and like, who's that gonna be? Like, when you look at the WWF roster, who do you think they can spare? I think Benoit and Jericho are too important to the WWF to spare. So I think we're talking like Test, Big Show, I don't know, beyond that, maybe Rhino.
In this hypothetical example where it's not the invasion, it's just a new show, I think that you're probably right.
The original intention is to run WCW as its own thing, with like Jim Ross and Shane kind of being the leaders of it.
I have always stood steadfast with the idea that this was an opportunity to level up Jericho big.
Maybe make him the guy.
Because the other challenge, too, is that, like, none of these people are baby faces when they come in. Like, this is, how are you supposed to put on a show where everyone's a heel? It just doesn't make any sense.
They're not. Booker T and DDP are both baby faces.
Well, not the way that they bring him in.
No, but they're not coming in. It's going to be its own promotion.
Right.
Yeah, like it's going to be a different thing. And when they try to bring them in, when they do bring them in, they actually do try to bring them in as baby faces at first, because I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that. That's the part that gets the most confusing. Where they're like, oh, we're going to do an invasion, but WCW are going to be the good guys. No, they're not.
This is what I was saying with the Vince thing at WrestleMania 17, and I'm sure a lot of you listened to that and you laughed about how stupid an idea that was. But again, the identity of this invasion angle makes no fucking sense. Are they baby faces? Are they heels? What are they?
The vision is that it's gonna be its own company, and then eventually you're gonna bring them. Like, I think it would be its own company, and then my guess is WrestleMania would be like the Super Bowl of wrestling, where we get WWF versus WCW matches.
Steve, let me hit you with this. What if the night after Backlash, the night after this show, they do a draft?
Like a dispersal draft for WCW?
Yeah,
or they do the roster split and they're picking both WWF and WCW guys.
I would do that one.
Yeah, and the next part, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but the next thing that happens is at some point, when they realize they can't get a real TV deal, they're just like, oh, let's just give Raw to WCW and make that the WCW show, and the idea is going to be Vince and Linda get divorced, and Linda gets half the company, and she gives Raw to Shane to be the WCW show. What they came up with.
Which is actually kind of the same as my idea, except if you just reverse and Shane gets WWE and Vince gets WCW.
Yeah, you could have, the Vince-Shane match at WrestleMania could have been that if Shane wins, he gets to run either Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah. And I think that's a good idea. I think that makes more sense structurally.
Yeah. Now, one issue is with that draft, you can't really draft these WCW guys because there's no stars here.
Right.
And you don't know when is Lance Storm getting picked in the hypothetical WWF draft? Not high.
It'll be like one of those one of those expansion drafts where you get all charged up to see who gets drafted. And it's just a bunch of people you've never fucking heard of.
The WCW guys are going to fall further than Shador Sanders.
Yeah.
So just as an example of where they are in terms of what it would take to buy guys out, Goldberg was said to be making $6 million a year. I haven't checked that against the actual WCW payroll because that is out there because of some lawsuits, but that might be a little high, but I can believe it was in that range.
I wouldn't be surprised, especially since in its dying days, how else are you supposed to keep him on the roster? I don't know why he would want to work there.
Nobody on the WWF roster has anywhere near a guarantee that big. I don't think they would do guarantees of over $1 million a year. Austin was making way more than that, but the minimum, his minimum was $1 million, and I think Vince was very stubborn at this point that he wouldn't do more than $1 million guarantee for anybody. So no way are they bringing in guys like Goldberg and Hogan and Nash on multi-million-dollar annual guarantees.
I think we heard that, I don't even remember where we heard this recently, that, Vince was still obsessed with the no more than a $1 million guarantee until I think Roman was the one who broke it.
Wow. I don't know, but I'm sure Brock beat it.
I'm sure he did, and, maybe that's a different situation, I don't know. But, it's recent that Vince changed his mind on that.
Yeah. The expectation is that the WCW roster would be supplemented with some underutilized WWF guys. I don't know, probably not worth going through who we'd pick for that.
Nah.
Mike Tenay and Scott Hudson were expected to be the announcers for the show. That sounds miserable to me. I never liked Scott Hudson.
And we see Scott Hudson in practice be part of what basically cost them everything here.
WCW was going to get Joey Styles, is my understanding. They should have just gotten Joey Styles for it.
Jesus Christ. If they had gotten Joey Styles, how things would be different.
They were initially scheduled to do their first taping on May 9th, so it was coming up really fast here. I think it was going to be May 9th in Atlanta.
Literally, if Buff Bagwell and Booker T don't have the shittiest match in the history of professional wrestling, this was all gonna happen.
They were gonna try. They pushed it. First they delayed it to June 16th, and then they canceled it, and it just never got rescheduled. At some point here, they just acknowledged this was not going to work, and then, as we'll talk about, they tried a series of other stupid ideas.
This is the summer of the stupidest string of ideas in WWE history. To the point where even when opportunities to pull out of the free fall present themselves, when we eventually get to the Austin, showing back up thing, they just can't do it. They just can't fix it for themselves.
All right. Are you ready for the Invasion Lightning round?
Christ, yes.
Johnny Valentine died. Rest in peace, Johnny. I believe he was paralyzed in the plane crash that Ric Flair was in.
Yeah, big ups to Johnny, one of the great legends of all time, not one that's probably particularly well known anymore, but
No,
certainly
his career was, long before stuff that most people have seen. Heard he was a real badass. Heard he threw some really nasty chops.
yeah, like, he wrestled everybody, Inoki, San Martino, Thez, everybody.
ECW filed for bankruptcy. Paul Heyman's family were the largest creditors, being owed $3.8 million. The WWF was listed as being owed almost $600,000 as they had been lending ECW money here at the end.
Do you think Paul's parents ever got any of that money back?
Yes, because we're going to talk about the amazing scam Paul Heyman pulls off to get them.
Ooh, I don't know about that. That's exciting.
That'll come in a few months. In an interview on Wrestling Observer Live, Brock Lesnar told a story of a 60-minute sparring session with Antonio Inoki, where he was impressed by Inoki's conditioning. This is Brock Lesnar, like, fresh out of Minnesota.
Wait a minute. I don't know about this. That happened?
I don't either. This sounds insane.
Like, first of all, I love the idea of Inoki still, like, scouting everybody who could possibly be part of his Inokiism shit, because this was when he was deep in it, and the company
Brock
was...
is the perfect... It turns out Brock was the guy he was always looking for.
He was also, like, super-duper scouting American talent at this point. This is around the time that he opens the LA dojo that, like, Danielson will wrestle for, Rocky Romero will wrestle for, all sorts of shit like that. If he had gotten his hands on Lesnar...
That's perfect. Like, the absolute perfect Gaijin heel. Now, I don't think there's any way Lesnar would have stuck with... I don't think there's any way he's going to just, like, live in Japan. I don't see that. We know when he actually goes to New Japan, it's going to be a debacle.
One of the most disastrous things that ever happened in wrestling.
Meltzer reported a fan at Access paid $300 to eat ravioli with the Big Show.
$300 to eat ravioli with the Big Show.
I wouldn't even pay for the can of ravioli to eat ravioli with the Big Show.
Oh, and I bet it was that Chef Boyardee fucking ravioli they were selling at the time, wasn't it?
Probably.
Oh, no.
WrestleMania for 2002 was rumored to be taking place at Tropicana Field in St. Petersburg. They would go with Toronto instead.
Boy, what a great choice to go to Toronto with one of the hottest crowds in wrestling history.
Who gets cheered between Hogan and Rock in St. Petersburg? That is, like, literally Hogan's hometown.
I mean, ironically, I don't think either one of them is as over in Florida as they probably should be.
Yeah. WMC-TV, which had broadcast Memphis wrestling since the 1970s, canceled the show even though it was still doing a 5.0 rating. This is really the end of the era.
How wild is that like, a show can locally be doing a fucking 5?
Yeah. On, I think Saturday morning was when Memphis wrestling was on.
I wonder if, like, something happened, because otherwise, like, why do you even bother doing anything about it? It's like Saturday morning. Who cares?
It's just like everything, wrestling can't sell sponsorships, even at that high of rating, so it just wasn't worth it economically to keep showing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kaiji Muto and Takada drew over 13,000 for a New Japan versus All Japan match at the Budokan.
Yes, they fucking did.
Pretty good. Like, not as good as when Hogan put 250,000 people in the Budokan, though.
How fucking dare you. Like, that is easily my favorite of his lies, because he's been in the Budokan. I know for a fact he knows that it only holds like 8,000 people.
It's just a normal arena.
Yeah, brother, I packed 70,000 in the Budokan.
A Gallup survey showed pro wrestling was the least popular of the 11 sports they asked people about. A reminder that even at its peak, this was still a niche thing.
But I wonder if they had asked, like, 2 years before, it was probably more popular than, like, tennis.
Probably, you would think.
I don't know.
Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey were reported to be working on something called MattRats.com, which was a Canadian wrestling promotion. I know both those guys were interested in some Matt Rats based on stories I've heard.
I was going to say, which one of us is going to make the joke first? And, why didn't they call Jim Cornette? He could have been really helpful with that project.
Yeah, when I found out Jim Cornette had a pet rat in his house, I was not thinking it was an actual rat.
Oh, he definitely always had a pet rat in his house.
Nick Dinsmore appeared as an unnamed jobber in a segment where Kurt Angle locked him in lots of submission holds.
That's interesting. I don't remember that.
Yeah. I assume he was an OVW then. Was he already an OVW? Yeah, Eugene showed. He may not have been an OVW quite yet at this point. He may have just been a local at this point.
Nick Dinsmore was an OVW before it was a development territory.
Yeah. Big Show called Kaientai either a couple of goofs or a couple of gooks, depending on who you believe. Personally, I heard gooks. Whoa. He swears it was goofs.
That's rough.
Yeah. And then they bleeped it out, which made it, even though he swore he said goofs, they bleeped it out, which made it sound much more offensive.
My God.
And finally, the Hammer. When ECW was short on talent for their final show, pay-per-view for March 2001, Triple H volunteered to go work on it.
Now, this is not the first time that Triple H had volunteered to go down to ECW, but
he badly wanted to work ECW. The idea of the game Triple H, top heel in the company Triple H working ECW is insane.
And he wanted to work with Justin Credible.
Yeah,
and I want you guys to imagine peak Triple H, megastar Triple H, showing up in the bingo hall or the Hammerstein or whatever they would have done it, and then, wrestling fucking PJ.
I love the idea of blue blood Hunter Hearst Helmsley Triple H in ECW, because he would have just been perfect to get chokeslammed by Sid. That's what Sid or 911, that's what that segment was made for. Fucking Hunter Hearst Helmsley is out there bowing to the crowd and getting shit on, then Sid comes out and chokeslams him through the mat.
Imagine if back when, Lawler did his invasion of ECW, he had brought Hunter Hearst Helmsley with him. Because also, Triple H is way bigger than anyone who was on their roster at the time.
He would have made them all look like jabronis, except Sid.
Yeah, he would have been like Brock Lesnar there until Sid showed up.
All right, before we get to the show, let's go outside the bubble where we talk about what was going on outside the world of wrestling.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods won the Masters, completing his incredible Tiger Slam of winning the 4 straight major championships. This was, when we talk about athletes being dominant, it's hard to top Tiger Woods in this era.
It's so funny because my mom was a gigantic golf fan, watched it religiously all the time. Oh, she watched amateur golf. That's how big of a fan she was. So when he was an amateur golfer, I became a fan of his just because I thought Tiger was a cool name, and I was like 13 or whatever.
There's a black guy playing golf. That was a real novelty, and he was good.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I didn't expect him to become the greatest of all time, so I was blown away and so into it when he did.
Yeah, this is incredible. So the previous year, he didn't win the Masters, but then he won the U.S. Open, the British Open, and the PGA in a row. And so we come back around to the next year and he wins the Masters. So he won 4 in a row, just not in the same calendar year, but still an unbelievable achievement.
This year of Tiger is as dominant as any athlete has ever been in any sport. He wasn't winning by a little.
Yeah, he's crushing these guys. He's making them look foolish.
Until he started getting hurt, he was basically unbeatable.
He had a weakness for the ladies.
He sure did.
The first round of the NBA playoffs were mostly chalk. The only real upset was the number 6 Charlotte Hornets swept the Miami Heat 3-0. That seems like it would have been a surprise. Although maybe Alonzo Mourning was having his kidney issues at this point.
I think he was at the time, yeah.
Yeah,
but
that
even
would
then,
explain that.
I couldn't tell you a single human being on those Charlotte Hornets teams.
No, because haven't they traded Glenn Rice at this point? Yeah, they have.
They have.
Yikes. And the Toronto Raptors beat the Knicks in 5 games to advance out of the first round. Peak Vinsanity.
I want you guys to know, as a lifelong Toronto Raptors fan, that this was the peak of that fandom until they finally won that title.
In the NHL, the number 2 seeded Detroit Red Wings were upset by the Los Angeles Kings 4-2. This broke my little heart.
Let's say, and if you're wondering why we haven't mentioned the NHL on any of the previous times that we've covered this, it's because Steve really just wanted a chance to talk about the Red Wings for a second.
And very surprisingly, the number 2 seeded Ottawa Senators were swept by the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's what I love about the hockey playoffs. Just the wildest shit happens. A 7 sweeping a 2 makes no sense, but it's just like, stuff like that happens in the NHL with some regularity.
This is the closest I ever came as a kid who lived in Southern Virginia but was a fan of all Toronto sports to Toronto supremacy. So this was a good year for me.
Over in Europe, the Netherlands became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage. Good job to the Danes being ahead of the curve.
Real ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Slobodan Milosevic surrendered to be tried for crimes against humanity. Good, and I hope he's burning in hell.
Boy,
Monster.
that's really one of those names that, like, when I was growing up and, like, just starting to become aware of what politics were, that was a name I heard constantly, and boy, I haven't heard it in a long time.
Yeah, modern-day Hitler. Absolute monster.
Yep.
In boxing, Hasim Rahman upset Lennox Lewis to win the heavyweight championship in a fight in South Africa. I don't think anyone had heard of Hasim Rahman before this. He hit the lottery punch here.
And, like, while on one hand, good for him, on the other hand, this is basically
boxing.
the end of big-time boxing for a decade.
Yeah, it goes real quiet here until Mayweather gets big.
Yep.
In music, All For You by Janet Jackson was number 1 on the charts.
And ironically, thanks to Generation Z and TikTok, one of the Janet Jackson songs off of that album became a gigantic viral hit like a month ago.
In the movies, Driven, starring Sylvester Stallone, displaced Bridget Jones's Diary for number 1 at the box office. My memory is Driven was thoroughly mediocre.
Those are both movies that I love for very, very different reasons. And
Driven very different movies.
Yeah.
I'm hoping this Brad Pitt Formula 1 movie is good. It's getting good buzz.
It's difficult. It needs to be way more about what's not on the track because, my God, like, somehow, like, filming races just never feels as good as, like, an actual race, you know?
The NFL draft saw the Atlanta Falcons trade up to number 1 to take Michael Vick, but the Chargers got the better of the deal by getting LaDainian Tomlinson with their first pick and then Drew Brees later in the first round. That is an incredible haul.
It's extremely funny because I don't think anyone in that moment would have thought that, like, the Falcons could have possibly lost that deal because Michael Vick was a once-in-a-lifetime prospect.
Yeah.
He actually,
20 years too soon.
Yeah, he grew up in the neighborhood that I'm from in Newport News, Virginia. So, like, I was a big Michael Vick booster. That doesn't go well.
Some other notable picks. Richard Seymour went number 6 to the Patriots. Steve Hutchinson went number 17 to the Seahawks. The Bears took wide receiver David Terrell from Michigan, who turned out to be a bust. And the Lions took Jeff Backus from Michigan, who had a real solid career as their starting left tackle for about a decade.
As this segment, which is pretty new, takes shape, I do love what's going to become a recurring theme, which is that our sports teams are beleaguered, shitty, never-win sports teams and the mistakes that they made over time.
All right, to get into the show, it's Sunday, April 29th, 2001. We're at the Rosemont Horizon in Rosemont, Illinois, just outside Chicago. Sold-out crowd of about 16,000, 14,751 paid for an $831,000 gate and $143,000 in merchandise sales. Really solid gate numbers. Real strong.
again, like, the business has not fallen off yet, for all, like, that is the narrative.
Well, the pay-per-view numbers have. It does 375,000 buys.
Oh.
I had to go back to Armageddon 1999 to find a pay-per-view that low. They hadn't been under 400,000 for that long, over a year.
Christ.
Yeah.
Do you attribute that to just like a soft main event and no drawing points on the show, or do you think it's just fallen off?
I don't think their TV viewership is fine. I think people, everybody bought WrestleMania, and WrestleMania was extra expensive. So I think for all but the real diehards, dropping another $35 on this card was just a bridge too far.
And again, this is look at this card on paper. It's garbage.
Would you pay for this? I wouldn't.
There are at least 3 matches on this card that are absolute heat matches. Like, they wouldn't even be on Raw.
On Heat, Jerry Lynn beat Crash Holly to win the light heavyweight championship. I actually wouldn't have minded seeing that.
I was actually super into Jerry Lynn during this time because he was so different from everything else that was going on.
I had seen him in ECW, so I knew he was rad.
Yeah. I just knew that, like, this guy who looked, like, truly bizarre and unlike anyone else in WWE would occasionally come on, have a really kick-ass 6-minute match, and then leave.
And Lita beat Molly Holly. She recovered from that chair beating awfully fast.
Yep, whooped that ass in 2 minutes. Not bad, Lita.
Yeah.
And of course, those matches couldn't be on the show, so that we could get what match, Steve?
Oh, God. X Factor versus the Dudley Boys.
Yo, we dealing with the X Factor.
God, I was so mad they didn't have their Uncle Cracker music.
I was furious.
Pissed.
I don't know if they didn't
have it yet, or if did they edit it out?
No, because when they edit it out, it's like that.
They've got like a Jimmy Hart version of what you're looking at.
Yeah, so like I think this was the actual music they had at the time.
Of course, I did some Googling on this. According to X-Pac, his other choice was a Red Hot Chili Peppers song.
Like, which one?
I don't know which one it would be. I was thinking By the Way, but that song hadn't come out yet. That would also be pretty heelish.
I mean, if they had been coming out to, like, Give It Away, that would actually have been pretty sick.
It doesn't get more heelish than coming out to Uncle Cracker.
Let me ask you a question, Steve. Is there any universe in which X Factor could have been a thing?
I think they're a little too... Are they just too big of mismatched weirdos? But they're kind of going for the Freebirds here, right? Like, Albert is definitely Terry Gordy. They don't have their Michael Hayes is the problem. Like, they don't have the great promo.
I don't hate the idea of X-Pac as the leader of a stable, as just this slimy leader chicken shit.
Your Buddy Roberts.
But Justin Credible sucks.
Justin Credible is so bad. Man, because I was a kid, I had been brainwashed by the woke mind virus into thinking Justin Credible was cool because Paul Heyman pushed him so hard. So I thought Justin Credible was going to come in and be a star and, like, be Triple H's bodyguard and feud with Steve Austin.
Wow.
I mean, he was the ECW champion. Heyman pushed him to the moon. He came out to snap my fingers, snap your neck or whatever.
I mean, I get it.
I thought Justin Credible was going to debut at No Way Out 2001 and help Triple H beat Steve Austin in the 2 out of 3 falls match.
What a stunning thought to be floating around.
He was destined for greatness.
I do feel like I like the idea of X-Pac in a stable with all huge guys who, like, so he can be a total chicken shit. Like, if he had TNA and, like, The Big Show, I think that could work.
This match was okay, I guess. Like, I was shocked when X Factor got the win with a double super kick clean. That was surprising.
I do love the X marks the spot finish, like the double super kick. That is cool.
Yeah, this stable is not going to launch. Albert's going to end up getting the push of his life this summer, though. We'll talk about that a few weeks down the line.
the people that they choose to give pushes to during what is easily the busiest and most overpacked roster in history is also a really weird conflagration of people, right? Like Albert gets the push of his life during a time where nobody can get TV time.
Then we see the Duchess of Queensberry arriving, and she's greeted by William Regal. I randomly found out who this was, and I'm forgetting her name, but she's that woman who they gave the Warrior Award to, who does the company's community affairs and charity stuff.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's a very random choice.
Okay, so two things. One, I was sure this was a man in drag, so that's kind of a stunning thing there. And two, I remember vividly not knowing what the fuck the Duchess of Queensberry rules were, but being so sure it was a real thing. I remember going to school and being like, oh yeah, the Duchess of Queensberry rules.
Yeah. Meltzer wrote that he assumed this was going to be rounds in the British style.
I do love, one of my favorite unloved matches in history is Lance Storm versus Mike Awesome, where Jacques Rougeau is the ref, but he just keeps coming up with new Canadian rules.
You're the only person who loves that, I think.
I know, but I just love that as an idea.
How have you even seen that match?
What do you mean? I hadn't seen it at this point.
Yeah, was that New Blood Rising 2000 or some show you did a review on? Yeah,
that's what it was. Yeah, something like that.
Then Lillian interviews Kurt about his submission match against Benoit. Not much of note here. He's starting to get more intense, though. He's starting to turn into crazy Kurt.
We're starting to find it. We're starting to get there. You would never suspect that this is going to be the top babyface in the company in 6 months.
And then for the hardcore title, we've got Rhino against Raven. Surprisingly big pop for Raven in Chicago.
Raven, surprisingly over in random cities.
Yeah. By the way, on his podcast, Jim Ross confirmed that the who the fuck hired Raven story is true, and the answer is JR hired him.
Wait, did JR know he wasn't supposed to hire him and he did it anyway? Or did he not know about
I don't think he knew that Raven had been partying with Shane, because I don't think he was around for that.
So literally Vince walked down the hallway, saw Raven and said, what the fuck is he doing here?
Brought him back. And JR's like, well, it was me. I'm surprised. It's surprised to learn Vince doesn't need to sign off on a signing of that caliber.
I mean, at this moment, where
there's just so much shit going on right now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's doing oversight of that.
I have a steaming hot take here. I thought this was the best match on the show.
I think it's easily the best match on the show.
That really speaks more to this wasn't anything amazing, but this show was bad.
Also, I spent a lot of my online career burying Rhino, but that's later Rhino. This Rhino kicks fucking ass.
I love this Rhino. If he had been a couple inches taller, I think he would have had a really nice run here in this company, but I think they couldn't get past his height.
The spot in this match where he gores through the shopping cart is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
I've never forgotten that spot.
Oh, man.
Unforgettable. Raven has brought his shopping cart full of weapons into the ring, puts it in the corner, Rhino goes to spear him, Raven moves, and Rhino crashes through it.
And, I've seen it so many times, and I'm like, how did he not hurt himself? How is it possible?
Yeah. I mean, it is that part that naturally goes up, but you're still just running head first into it.
Yeah.
Rhino won with the gore. Really nice match. Really enjoyed this. Lots of stiff weapon shots here.
We're going to do a quick intermission here because I know we usually leave it to the end of the show, but fuck it, this time you've triggered Stump Steve.
Okay.
So, I want you to know that this Rhino hardcore title reign is the 10th longest hardcore title reign of all time at 34 days.
Okay.
The longest hardcore title reign of all time is 97 days. It began in the year 1999.
Okay.
Can you tell me who had it?
Okay, I'm gonna have to think. Who held the hardcore title in '99? I think at the big. Okay, '99 you had. In the early part of the year, it was like Big Boss Man had it, and Road Dogg beat him for it. Road Dogg had to vacate it. Hardcore Holly, Al Snow, Billy Gunn, Hardcore Holly again. I'm gonna. The Big Boss Man kept winning it, but he kept losing it. Is it the Boss Man? Boss Man, I think beat Al Snow for it. It fully loaded. But he only held it for like a month because I think the British Bulldog beat him for it and gave it back to Al Snow. I'm going to say Al Snow.
Steve, you were so close.
Oh, was it actually the Boss Man?
Boss Man won it again on October 10th on SmackDown.
Yes! That's right.
And then held it until January 17th on Raw. 97 days, the longest reign of all time.
All right, you got me with that one.
I
was thinking Crash Holly's hardcore title thing started sooner than that. But yeah, that didn't start until 2000.
Only 3 times did a man hold this title for at least 3 months.
RVD. The Undertaker do it?
No.
Not even The Undertaker, who was too afraid of, and they got rid of the 24/7 rule.
Yep, he only held it 58 days.
Wow. Backstage, they show Shane McMahon mocking the Big Show by reading Shane and the Beanstalk. This was pretty funny.
This was kind of cute the first time, but then they show it again. Like, they show this twice.
Then Michael Cole interviews Shane. Stephanie tries to get Shane to apologize to Vince to get out of the match, and Shane refuses.
It's weird. So we've just had like the big blow-off, fuck-off match at WrestleMania between Shane and Vince. Does it feel weird that the feud's still going and seems like less hot now than it was before?
I mean, that's the story of Vince McMahon, and that's why Linda McMahon is actually the best performers of any of the McMahons.
I'm coming around to you more every single week.
Every week. Then Kevin Kelly gets a word with Austin as him and Deborah are coming into the arena.
Poor Deborah. She's just window dressing in all of these segments during this period.
Yeah. Do you think they ever should have acknowledged that Austin and Deborah were married?
I don't see why. I almost feel like it was literally just to be like, oh yeah, I took this from Jeff Jarrett because I hate him so fucking much. I'm going to put it on TV.
Because he called me a blasphemer.
Yep.
Then Coachman catches up with the Duchess and asks her about the rules for the match. Regal interrupts and tells him to stop bothering her, you sick freak.
Regal is so good at the little things. This whole thing where he's just like,
the Duchess, you can't talk to her, you're a commoner.
Yeah. Come over here, my dear. We're going to get you to a nicer place away from this commoner. Like, he's just so on point with every single thing that he does until the match starts.
And then we get the Duchess of Queensberry rules match between Chris Jericho and William Regal. They've never explained what a Duchess of Queensberry rules match is, and that's the whole point. Only Regal knows, so he can make up the rules as he goes along. Except it's actually the Duchess doing it. The Duchess is smartened up.
That's my favorite part, is that it's not Regal coming over her telling her what to say. It'll be like, Regal will hit him with the chair and be like, actually, this is a no disqualification match.
Yeah, the Duchess has been grinding her tape. She knows the rules.
This kind of match really has to end with the babyface still finding a way to win, right?
You would think so.
Like, if you're not trying to bury the babyface by having them basically get beaten 4 separate times in the same match.
Jericho does a pretty lame pre-match promo making fun of Regal and the Duchess.
It's literally the same. He recycles the same picture of Regal that he had shown on Raw.
It's running out of material. A couple minutes in, Jericho hits a Hurricane Rana and then the Lion Salt. But the bell rings and the Duchess announces that the first round has just ended.
The first time that this happened, I genuinely laughed out loud. It's still funny.
And I love Heyman on commentary. He's like, oh, yes, of course. That's the end of the first round, JR. You should know that.
And as they keep coming. Like Heyman keeps being like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed this line down here, JR."
Yes. After the restart, Jericho gets Regal in the walls and Regal taps, but the Duchess announces there are no submissions. Regal hits Jericho over the head with the Duchess's scepter, and the Duchess announces there are no disqualifications under Queensberry rules.
Obviously.
Yeah. Oh, JR, I forgot to mention that. No disqualifications, of course. Regal gets thrown into the Duchess's crotch, and then Jericho proceeds to put her in the walls. In kayfabe, who is this? Is this a prostitute?
Yeah,
yes.
probably. Right?
Regal hired an escort for this role in kayfabe, I feel like.
Isn't it just Jericho's character that, like, if there's an opportunity to put the walls of Jericho on a woman, he will absolutely lose a match in order to do so?
Definitely. That's his
highest
priority.
The vast majority of his matches.
While he's got her in the walls, Regal smashes him with a chair and pins him for a pretty shocking upset.
I mean, it's nice to see that he won at least one match during this entire fucking era, but at the same time, like, that was pretty unexpected.
I enjoyed this more than I was expecting. I would say this was the second best match on the show.
This is the second best match using this exact same concept after Lance Storm versus Mike Awesome.
God, you know what this show reminds me of? WCW Uncensored.
Ooh, you're not wrong.
All the ridiculous gimmick matches. It's basically all gimmick matches when you look at it.
Yeah, and then there's a 6-man and a triple threat, which are sort of gimmick matches unto themselves.
Backstage, Vince tells Big Show not to go easy on Shane tonight.
And then they do this thing, like, Big Show is so awkward in this, where all this needs to be is Vince is just like, hey, if you don't beat my son's ass, you're fired. And Big Show being like, don't worry about it. But instead they do this like, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, for like, seriously 30 seconds.
And then we get the ultimate submission match. It's Chris Jericho against Kurt Angle. It's a 30-minute Iron Man match where you can only score falls by submission. You know what I don't like? Iron Man matches. You know what else I don't like? Submission matches. Not a good combination.
This is the eternal question that we ask time and again with every Iron Man match and every kind of similar thing. Is this better than a 30-minute just regular match between these two people would have been? And as always, the answer is no.
This would have been a 30-minute submission match would have put over just how tough these guys are, that they will not tap out. These guys will not quit. They are so desperate to beat each other.
It just drives me crazy. There's 7 submissions in this.
It's such a bad idea, the way they book this. Like, I hate to use the term buried, but I really kind of feel like they buried Benoit here, having him tap out so many times. Like, maybe wrestling shouldn't work that way, but it's very well established in this company. Like, top baby faces do not tap out.
And it's not even to, like, just to the ankle lock every time. It's to all sorts of, like, random-ass submission moves.
Yeah, and on commentary, Heyman does a good job explaining why that makes sense, but the live crowd isn't hearing that.
Yeah, here's the thing. 10 years later, would you be able to do this match? Sure, because at that point, people, like, UFC is much bigger, people understand submission wrestling more than they do now. Here, they've just started to introduce the idea that mat wrestling can be something that people might want to see. And now we're getting hit with this. Yeah. In contrast to WrestleMania, this crowd was nowhere near as into the mat exchanges. They were very quiet. But again, that's because nothing in an Iron Man match matters until the end, and then this match has the balls to go to overtime. Fuck you.
7 minutes in, Kurt manages to get Benoit in the ankle lock, and Benoit taps immediately. Heyman explains that makes sense because he can't afford to get injured.
Sure.
Yeah. A minute later, Benoit gets Angle in the cross arm breaker, and Kurt taps, so it's 1-1. Angle taps out Benoit with the ankle lock to go up 2-1 10 minutes in. Then he immediately puts Benoit in the crossface, and Benoit taps again. So Kurt goes up 3-1. At this point, the crowd seems pretty upset by the booking. I think they feel like Benoit's getting buried.
And again, maybe if it goes 20 minutes before the first submission, but then they're coming fast and furious because they're both so beaten down by that point, like, maybe that's more acceptable. But at this point, Benoit's literally tapped out 3 times in 11 minutes. Like, what the fuck?
So, for about the next 10 minutes, Kurt beats on Benoit, but he can't get any more submissions. Then Benoit makes a comeback and invents the Brock lock to get Angle to tap out.
So do you think that when, like, Brock came to him in, like, 2003 and was like, hey, I'm looking for a submission, that he was like...
Sense, actually, because Benoit's the first guy he did it on.
But, like, how Benoit's able to do it is beyond me, because, like, so this is sort of like a move that already existed called the stretch muffler. But, like, that's not a move that, like, a short guy like Benoit would normally do, because there's just too much person.
So it's 3-2 Angle. There's still 12 minutes left. Holy shit, this went forever. The match dragged as we tick down to 5 minutes to go. Finally, with 2 minutes left, Benoit gets Kurt in the ankle lock, and Kurt taps. So it's 3-3. With 90 seconds left. All right. Kurt gets Benoit in the ankle lock in the final seconds. Benoit taps out, but it's after the bell. Jesus. What are we doing here? That's a chicken shit heel finish.
And every single Iron Man match that goes to an overtime is an explicit explanation that the last 30 minutes were a waste of your fucking time. I
think I would have had Kurt just walk out and refuse to, like, do the sudden death.
I honestly think that this match, if I could book this match and I was forced to make it be an ultimate submission, it would be 0-0 and end in a tie, and Angle refuses to continue. That's how.
You want to do your least favorite match in history over again? You want to do Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart over again?
But the difference is no overtime. You know what? I just wouldn't do this. Let's be about that.
No, this was a horrible idea. This was the worst match I could imagine these two having.
And, like, they'll finally get a chance to do it right and, like, basically avenge this at Royal Rumble 2003, where it's be like, just give us the 30 minutes and get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, just let them wrestle. So they go into overtime. After 2 minutes, Benoit gets Angle in the crossface. Angle taps. Hated it. Again, the stipulation way dragged down what these guys were capable of. Would have been probably best as just a regular match. And I'd be okay with just a one fall submission match. You know, you could make that work too. But I'm not the biggest fan of submission matches because I don't like removing the near falls from that.
You could also keep the finish the same, because the finish of pushing off the rope and, like, getting it into the crossface is actually sick as hell.
That was cool. Oh, did you mean like the go to the time limit and then go into overtime, or just the, like?
Oh, I just mean literally the submission. Like, if
that was good. I liked that. All right, next up, we've got the last man standing match between Shane McMahon and The Big Show. Weirdly, Shane has a different version of Here Comes the Money here.
It was similar enough that it was driving me crazy wondering if it was actually different or not.
Yeah, I don't think this one was by Naughty by Nature. It's got different lyrics, or different lyrics.
So he must have gotten that in between this show and the next one?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Shane starts off beating on Big Show with a kendo stick and a chair, and then he uses a rag soaked with ether to choke Big Show out. Yeah, Shane is just whooping Big Show's ass.
He uses a rag soaked with ether as a transition spot in this match. I did love the touch where he put on a little mask, though, so he wouldn't also get knocked out.
Smart. At this point, Vince runs down and hits Shane with a chair. Big Show beats up Shane, but keeps pulling him up on the count. Then Test shows up and nails Big Show with a big boot.
I marked out huge when Test ran out. There are only 2 relationships in WWE history where the two people never turned on each other no matter what. Doesn't matter what alignment the other person had, they always had each other's back. And for some reason, those two relationships are Billy Gunn in China and Test and Shane McMahon.
They go up on the stage, Test puts Big Show down, Shane climbs all the way to the top of the Titantron and jumps off it. This has got to be a 20-foot drop, maybe 25. This is a big one. This is
probably one of the biggest and I know that they're landing on a crash pad. I do know that.
It's balsa wood. It's got a crash pad. This is safer than when he went through the announce table.
Yeah.
When he would go off Hell in a Cell. That's more dangerous because it's a smaller area he needs to hit.
That's maybe the most dangerous spot anyone's ever done.
It's up there.
No fucking reason. But, this looks so fucking cool. And I know it's also wood, but he explodes through the wood.
He's got to be going so fast at the end of this drop.
And, he does, the little cross himself first. It's just a great moment. This is cool. This match sucks, but this is a great finish.
The whole point was just to get to this. If anything, it should have been shorter because they probably should have just had Shane attack Big Show during his entrance and speed things up.
Here's the wild thing. Is that, Shane's is in the middle of a run where he's going to do the WrestleMania match, this, and then the King of the Ring whole thing. And it's going to turn him into a mega super untouchable babyface forever.
Yeah, just in time for him to turn heel and lead the invasion.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah. Big stunt, otherwise this was not very good.
No. Total trash. Big Show is unsalvageable at this point. They honestly should have released him.
What a jabroni he is. Yeah, I think he would have been going to WCW if that had happened.
He didn't even come close to beating Shane. Shane whooped his ass.
Backstage, Vince yells at Stephanie and Triple H about Shane winning. Vince says Triple H is his only true son.
That was actually kind of funny. I like that.
Steve Blackman is at WWF New York, and then his tag partner, Grandmaster Sexay, obnoxiously interrupts his interview.
My wife, who watches with me, said, and I quote, "What is that?" when Grandmaster Sexay appeared on camera. Also, this is Steve Blackman's last ever pay-per-view appearance.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm just hearing that for the first time.
Pretty depressing.
He's a guy I would have sent to WCW.
Sure.
Could have been the new Jerry Flynn.
I just love that it would have been your WCW would have just been this island of lost toys, and I kind of love that.
We could have gotten these guys over.
Just guys who were over at some point. Let's see if there's any juice left in the tank.
You know the world wants to see Steve Blackman wrestle Goldberg.
I do, now that you've said those words out loud. I'd watch that now.
Then for the European title, we've got Matt Hardy defending against Eddie Guerrero and Christian. This is a very random match.
This is the most heat match that has ever taken place on pay-per-view. Matt
beat Eddie on SmackDown to win the title, so Jeff got a title, so Matt has to get a title.
The European Championship shouldn't even be mentioned out loud anymore. What?
No.
There's never been a more pointless belt than this.
Would we have sent the European title to WCW?
Yeah, you guys can have that one. Enjoy.
That could be one of the many belts Lance Storm wins.
Oh yeah, I would have just had that happen again. Lance Storm wins every belt for both sides.
This is probably a worse match than any single combination of singles matches would have been between these guys. I could say that confidently.
I wouldn't have imagined that any of these three men could have a match this lame. It's only 6 minutes, so there's not much they can do, but isn't this right before Eddie leaves?
Yeah, Eddie's going to be out of here before much longer. The demons are really catching up to him at this point.
Yeah, he's really not himself. Christian is not leveled up yet. Matt is Matt.
Matt. Ed shows up to spear Matt. Jeff hits Christian with a swanton bomb, and Matt gets the pin with a twist of fate. Bathroom break match.
Like, I know triple threat matches are no DQ, but at one point Jeff hits the twist of fate and literally shoves the ref out of his way to go attack Edge. At which point the ref is like, "You were here?"
Yeah. With horror, I realize there's still 40 minutes left in the show, and we're down to the main event.
Is there anything in the world more poisonous than the words Kane and The Undertaker next to the words 30-minute match?
Not good. All right. It's time for the main event. The winner takes all match as the two-man power trip takes on the Brothers of Destruction. This is what the world has come to.
You know what made me the maddest about this match? Is simply that we didn't get any kind of cool two-man power trip entrance. They never came up with one. I really would have been interested to see what they would have come up with.
I think the egos are too big for them to come out together.
I guess that's true.
Could you have done a mashup of their music?
Of Disturbed's Glass Shattered and The Game theme?
Yeah, I think it's worth trying.
Do it.
Surprisingly, Triple H and Austin come out first.
Yep, that is weird.
Can't really explain that one. Austin and Triple H busted up Kane's arm on SmackDown, so it's all bandaged up. Basically, the story of the match is Undertaker doesn't want to tag Kane in because Kane's hurt.
Makes sense. I also didn't want him to tag Kane in because Kane sucks.
I didn't want this match to be happening at all. Okay, how did this work? If you pinned, did you win the belt of whoever you pinned?
Yes.
Okay, it's not. I thought they said that if you just whoever got the pin won the war. Yes, you win the belt of whoever you pin, and your partner wins the other belt.
Yes.
So if you pin Triple H, your partner wins the WWF title without doing anything.
So you should just be completely unwilling to pin Triple H. Like,
Fuck
Triple H,
that.
get the fuck out of the ring.
Yeah, like, I don't know. That plays no role in this role. Maybe that would have been some interesting psychology if it had. How many other times can you think of where this kind of match happened? I remember when they did this with Kurt Angle and Samoa Joe in TNA.
Yep.
And I remember they did this on an episode of Nitro where they had Sting and Luger were the TV champ and the US champ. And I think, and they were the tag champions. And Flair was the world champion. And it was Flair and the Giant against Sting and Luger. And it was like, you won the belt of whoever you pinned.
Yeah, I don't think there have been many other ones like that. I mean, it's an intriguing idea in that time, but and in that case, they literally had 6 belts each. And I like that one because then they made Kurt defend all of those belts individually on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Here, I can't think of anything exactly like this. It's all just so you have the visual of them having all the belts, which is cool visual, and then they never have any idea where to go with it after that.
So yeah, this match was excruciatingly long and boring. Slow, plotting, heatless. It went on and on and on.
Yep. I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened in it. If I'm being totally honest with you, I fell asleep 2 or 3 times, and then I would rewind to get back, and I couldn't even find my place in the match, because it's a match that just continues, and nothing happens.
After an eternity of Kane getting beaten up, Undertaker chokeslams Austin behind the ref's back. Stephanie distracts Hebner, so Hebner takes the initiative to shove her off the apron. That's insane that a referee would do that.
Get it, Earl?
How does he not get fired for putting his hands on the boss's daughter? Raven got fired and all he did was take Shane out for a nice night on the town.
I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when the referees went on strike and he was the senior referee, I think the idea was that he was unfireable by anyone other than Linda.
You know what? This is actually a good catch. Well, wait. Okay, he had a deal with Triple H that he would, when Jericho beat Triple H for the title, the deal was Hebner would overturn the decision and nobody would be able to touch Hebner after that, but Triple H double-crossed him. But yeah, I think when Linda brought him back after that for Backlash 2000, they may have said something like he's unfireable now.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like, your senior referee probably should be unfireable.
Taker beats on both Austin and Triple H. He hits the last ride on Triple H. But even though he's been in the ring for several minutes, it turns out he's not the legal man. Dumbass.
This is one of the most egregious, sorry buddy, you're not the legal men's in history, because he's literally been the guy wrestling for 7 minutes now.
Austin hits Kane with the stunner. Austin and Undertaker fight out into the crowd. Stephanie gets in the ring. Kane hits her with a big boot. Man, Stephanie brought her working boots tonight.
Sure did.
Vince runs in with a sledgehammer, but Kane cuts him off. Triple H hits Kane with the hammer and pins him for the 1-2-3. Fuck this bullshit. Terrible. Awful.
Ultimately, I'm happy that they did win, because it's way more interesting than the alternative, I suppose. But, this is a drizzling shits match. This is up there with the worst main events in WWE pay-per-view history.
Horrible main event. Yeah. Almost 30 minutes of this garbage.
And again, I feel like maybe this is just how I remember it. I don't even know if it's true, but I feel like the crowd doesn't make a peep the entire time. They're not into this.
Okay. And that's the end of the show. I mean, we just get Triple H and Austin celebrating with the belts as we go off the air.
It's so funny to think that this is probably the most interesting 6 months in the history of WWE. We're coming straight off the greatest wrestling pay-per-view of all time, and yet this might be the most depressingly dud pay-per-view I can possibly imagine.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast the air has come out of this company. They were on the top of the world a month ago. Everything on this show felt so lame.
Yeah. When we talk, we're doing this season, and obviously the season's going to go to, a lot of really interesting places. It's just so funny that it has to start here, where, if you hadn't known that WrestleMania 17 just happened, you would think we were in a fucking doldrums. The boom is long, long over.
I mean, like I said, this show feels so WCW-ish, with all the gimmicks and the heels winning at the end.
It's very odd.
All right. Let's do Twitter questions. AJ Jones asks, why is the Austin chair attack on Lita on Raw going into Backlash not discussed more in the this is too much and unnecessary moments in wrestling? Even as a teen at the time, I was appalled. I think it's just because man-on-woman violence wasn't unusual at this time.
I mean, literally, Stephanie gets beaten the shit out of in the main event, and she's not a wrestler. She's not an athlete. It's treated as, oh, this evil woman's getting her comeuppance when she gets her ass whooped. That bothers me a lot more.
AJ Jones also asks, is The Rock's absence immediately after Mania 17 overlooked in the drop-off of popularity for wrestling? Yeah, it definitely didn't help.
I don't think people ever really mention it, and that's weird, isn't it? They always blame it on the invasion and on Austin's, failure as a heel, but, Yeah, I'm sure that did make a big difference. Like,
Rock,
you used to have the Rock fall back on.
It pops the ratings when he first comes back, and then after a few weeks, people are like, "This sucks," and they go back down.
But I think it's like a margin of error thing, like, right? Like, the more stars you have on the show, the more one of them can whiff.
Yeah, and if they had Rock to go up against the Power Trip, and the story was Rock is trying to find the partner to beat them, I think that could have been great.
Oh, I did. Okay. I had a forum feud for later, but I just changed it. Keep going.
Okay. And Ben Smith asks, who would you have had face Austin and Triple H instead of Undertaker and Kane? Probably either the Dudley Boys or the Hardy Boys.
Patterson and Briscoe would have been a better match.
Briscoe would have hooked him. All right, what's our forum feud?
Well, it was. Drove it straight out of my head. Steve, hypothetically, if this pay-per-view was between the two-man power trip of Steve Austin and Triple H and The Rock and a mystery opponent, name that mystery opponent.
The only man to come to the rescue for The Rock here would have to be Mick Foley. Like, he's got all the history in the world with Austin and Rock and Triple H and McMahon. And you could even have him become a bitter shithead and turn heel on Rock here like he always wanted to and join up with the Authority. That would have been perfect.
That's a pretty good idea, except that Mick Foley is washed as fuck and is fired.
Yeah, he's unfired. He's got open contracts. And then it turns out he hoarded himself out for money just like he did in reality.
In theory, those open contracts are only for guest referee spots because that's the only thing that he uses them for. But I have another idea. There is on this.
Is it going to be Rikishi? Is he going to do it for The Rock? Is he going to do it for the people?
That would be fantastic. But no, that's not where I was going. There exists on this roster at one point a man of superhuman babyface acumen, superhuman feats, and quite frankly, the most credible wrestler on this entire roster at this specific point in time. So I present to you that it should be Shane McMahon.
Get the fuck out of here with that.
McMahon. Is there anybody on this roster who's actually being pushed as hard as Shane McMahon is at this particular moment in time?
Sadly, no.
Is there anybody on this roster who would fit more into the main event, especially going up against Vince and his evil shit, than Shane? I don't think there is.
Mick Foley would be better because Mick Foley's a better wrestler.
Mick Foley would be better and we'd like it more, but
Mick Foley is beloved. Mick Foley. And then, like I said, Foley turning on Rock actually would have been perfect here.
I will say, however, that I don't think Mick Foley was in any sort of shape to have a match at this point.
Probably not. There's a reason he turned down the WrestleMania match against Vince.
It's not until he, literally works his ass off for 6 months straight for that match with Orton that he's in any sort of shape.
But you're really going to try to curse us with a bigger Shane McMahon match here? Haven't we already suffered enough?
I'm just saying, for this 4-month stretch, the only person on the roster who is getting over in their matches is Shane McMahon. I don't see any reason not to.
Well, could the Power Trip have possibly won that match? I feel like Shane's too tough.
No, see, I think Shane would have jumped out of the rafters with an elbow drop and he would have won.
Would they have been able to resist the temptation to have Shane turn on Rock?
Ooh, now that's interesting. And I want you guys to know at home that, the goal of every forum feud was to get that kind of defeated sigh that I just got out of Steve. That's money feeling right there, boys and girls.
Just how you would feel after hours and hours of fighting on these forums.
I finally beat him down. And then I'd go to my wife and be like, honey, I did it. And she would give me a very disappointed look and go back.
All right. Is that it for this week?
I believe it is. And next week we're going to do a show that I know that I've seen. I remember none of the matches from this show.
It was not very memorable. Yeah, next time we got Judgment Day 2001. Unfortunately, the season is not going to get better right away. Maybe we should have just started with King of the Ring.
Hey, boys and girls. You
Actually,
remember how we said they
let's do the negotiation segment. Do we want to just skip
Ooh.
Judgment Day?
That is interesting. Guys, Judgment Day has Austin versus Taker on it, which we just explicitly said they should never do on pay-per-view again.
I mean, is it really worth making us sit through this Judgment Day show? Is that what the people want?
In the mind of virtually everyone in existence, we skip straight from Backlash to King of the Ring. That's how basically the company treats it. We come alive again and the invasion officially begins at King of the Ring. Steve, I say we skip it.
Let's skip it. Fuck Judgment Day.
Fuck Judgment Day.
Alright, so yeah, next time we'll be coming at you with King of the Ring 2001, a much more interesting show than Judgment Day, featuring Steve Austin versus Chris Benoit versus Chris Jericho for the title, Shane McMahon versus Kurt Angle, King of the Ring with Edge, Christian, Rhino, and Kurt Angle, and DDP being revealed as a stalker pervert, right?
Oh, yeah. I will have many capital T thoughts about this show, as inexplicably, this is the show I have seen by far the most times in my life. A number that exceeds 50.
That's very strange.
That's right. I'll explain why next week.
Alright, so we'll have all that and more next time on the Lawcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you again next time.